Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the rain. I pray that you give us your Holy Spirit that we may understand what you have for us this morning. And be with the people that have not arrived yet. Be with Mark wherever he may be. Protect him. In Jesus' name, amen.
This is 2 days in a row.
No.
Sunday and Monday, right? Okay, so you got every Sunday morning opens up with 5 minutes for song service and opening prayer. Then you got 15 minutes to present. When the 15 minutes are done, Brother Jim says it's done, it's over, and then you got 5 minutes for the rest of the group to explain to you what you did wrong or right. And while you're presenting, the group's the only ones that are talking. That'd be hard for Michael, perhaps. But, I mean, when you're the audience, you just taking note of what's going on, and then you can explain what you think their weak point was.
We have to go through all of 1 through 8, and those two.
No, 1 through 8 is going to be by lot. You don't know what you're going to present because it's going to be by lot, which means that you should have a pretty good grasp of all 8 presentations, because if you're going to go up there and not know what it is until you go up there,
Father, I'm glad you're in my group.
then you can't just take one and become an expert on one. You need to be an expert on all 8, right? That's the pop part of it, Sister Turner. Okay. For the presenters, remember this will go on the web, so don't spend time addressing your stage fright or lack of ability. 15 minutes is not enough, so get to the point, take the input from your team, and make every action count. So the guy that's up there putting the lines on the board and explaining the subject, his 3 team members can remind him, okay, here's a second witness to that, put that up there. Or, you understand that?
So the whole team can participate to a sense, but there's only one board person?
Yeah.
That's actually a great idea. Sounds like fun. Who presents what?
Who presents what? See where it says Sunday and Monday? There are 8 topics, and every group will be here, and then Brother Jim's going to, by lot, Group A, he's going to pick by lot one of those 8, and Group 8 has to go up and do one of those 8.
So you have an There's Jack and Laverne down here. Are they not coming?
Pardon me?
Jack and Laverne. Will they be here?
8, if they're not, then it's just Michael and Tanya.
Whoa, we got
That's
diminished.
that's a great team.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the groups are a little
That's
bit.
not a good team.
The groups, okay, we passed it. I gave you opportunity to protest the groups, but the opportunity's passed. How would you change those groups around?
Really
They're
hot.
fine. I think they're
Michael and Tyler.
Unbold your name.
Yeah, I'm bold.
That doesn't change the groups. Where it says I'm a poor example of board clarity, everyone else makes nice straight lines and writes real clear and everything, and I get really, I put a whole bunch of stuff up there. You don't want to do that.
No, you don't. He's calculating everything.
Calculating.
He's got his calculator.
So it's not just that you want to be doing it so if you were actually teaching an audience that the people in the back row can read your writing. It's the technique of putting it on the board, it's the message, it's the witnesses. When you have a waymark, give 2 or 3 witnesses to prove that it's the right place.
Then you should do that more by example.
I did it by example. Oh, so I should be more clear by example? I'm not doing this. When I'm up there I'm doing something else. I said very clearly, do as I say, not as I do.
Oh, I forgot that.
Don't allow your team interaction to become a distraction to your audience. Right? And the critics, then you got 5 minutes to tell them what they did right or wrong. And remember, this will go on the web. Direct constructive criticism. And sometimes in this kind of environment, the group is unwilling to do constructive criticism. They just want to do praise. Do constructive criticism. The praise is really not necessary. Sister Karen.
Do other people out of your group, are they allowed to say things?
It's just your group.
What if we're totally wrong?
Then the
When
constructive
you got 5
criticism will
minutes to
come
say,
in.
hey man, you were totally wrong.
At the end.
At the-
But see, you have till Sunday, if it's important to you, to look this stuff over and interact with your group.
So are you gonna help with number 5 today? Because that's one of the ones we haven't went over as clearly as some of the other
That, I'm
ones.
gonna do Revelation 9 today.
'Cause the other ones have been kind of went over.
In relation as
Number
Yeah,
5,
first
I'm not real confident on yet.
Number 5, you're not real confident on.
I mean, I don't think the classes went over it adequately yet.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember what we went over in this class.
5, do 5.
What you can be held accountable for. But that's what I plan on doing is number 5 today.
Okay.
So the critique is by the entire class? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
the group, the presenters be quiet and everyone else critiques.
Are you giving us 10 or 15 minutes today to organize our teams on what we're going to be working on over the weekend, since this will be the last time we can organize them before Sunday?
I don't know, it depends on if I get to Revelation 9 in time. Does that seem like it's necessary? Do we need?
Yeah.
I think we need at least 5 to 10 minutes with the teams,
All right.
my opinion.
Any protests, corrections, observations, whatever? We'll move away from this.
Oh. I'm gonna be cooking tomorrow, or on Sunday.
Yeah, me too.
Autumn Joy will cover for her Sunday cooking. I haven't asked her, but I'm sure she'll be happy.
Yeah, all of this is subject to the Lord's providence.
Cover your
Is
breakfast.
Nice
Barbara
try.
gonna be coming too then on Sunday?
No, but I know you'll do really
Oh,
well.
no, I will take the cooking. If
That's
you're gonna stay, I'm gladly, I'll do a
I
job.
protest.
Protest what?
Yeah, I'll be
If
here.
Robin's not gonna be here and she's cooking, then who else? That's just Jack and me.
Is it Jack and me or Jack and I?
I always say
It's
Jack
me
and
and
I,
Jack.
and I got corrected that you don't say it. Sometimes you and I, and sometimes you don't. I still can't figure out when you say and I and when you don't say and I.
You wouldn't say I'm, let's see, I'm cooking. I wouldn't say me cooking, it's Jack and
I we just went out there.
So we
Well, that's for today.
don't know the dates that are presentations are recorded where you addressed each of these, right? You don't have that online.
I. What?
Like,
No,
you don't have a
because
title.
there hasn't been anything organized.
That's it.
The question was, do we know her online? We can go back and look at these particular presentations. We gave you most of them yesterday.
This is the last couple
2 weeks.
days, last 2 weeks, last week.
Get the,
What you can do is Pat Rampy, he goes to every one of our videos and he puts little tags in. He'll say Revelation 9, Esther, and you go through everything we talk about, just one word things
Tell
through
me,
the class.
how do you get to
I
Pat?
guess you should be.
Well, you
It's in the
just click on the
description.
video, and in the description below, people can comment, and Pat comments on every video. So it's really handy.
How are the lots? Are they gonna be in papers and a hat? Or who's gonna draw them? Does he draw them and give them to the group? Are the groups going in A, B, C, D, E, or?
Jim is supposed to do that.
I'm asking, how's it gonna work out?
We'll have 4 pieces of paper that say A, B, C, D, and we'll pick those for order.
Okay.
And then we'll have 8 other pieces of paper, 1 through 8. That's why they're A, B, C, D, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll pick those by lot. Revelation 9.
Hang on, one more
Pardon me?
question.
Can you be in a group?
Can I be in a group?
He's gone on Sunday.
Is Kathy, are you gonna be here?
Kathy will be here on Monday.
So we know that group D is going on Monday.
But every group goes every day. There's 4 groups, and there's enough for 4 presentations a day, if Jim keeps us on time.
Jim's got more questions over there.
Yeah, I think he just, I think I just got mixed up on that statement. I thought it was 8 topics. So there would be 2 topics. I'm sorry?
2 for each group.
One
That's why they're
bold-faced
bold.
person goes Sunday for ABCD, and the
Okay.
other goes.
You got 15 minutes presentation, 5 minutes
Superman.
critiquing, that's 20
20
minutes
minutes.
times 4 is 80 minutes in a 90-minute class. You're gonna have 5 minutes and you just sit around and do nothing.
But that's one,
But Jeff,
So
it
times
takes you an
two
hour and a half
classes.
to
Yeah,
go
Sunday
through
and
one.
Monday.
Sunday and Monday, that's, it's in there, Sunday.
All the groups will have one
Around here.
presenter.
This is practice in presenting publicly and practice in the ability to shrink down a presentation and make a point.
You can
You
make an
can't do
outline.
the whole presentation, but if you get up there and you don't even make one point, it's just all random, unconcluded thoughts, then the people that critique you will give you a bad grade, but we don't grade.
So can we just do an outline of what, or do we have to go into actually proving what we're trying to say?
An outline don't mean that much if you don't have any witnesses.
I have a lot of outlines in there, though. Every single one says outline and present, outline and present. So apparently outline is part of it.
What's outline? What do I mean by outline?
line
The
upon
line
it.
up on the board.
Oh, okay. Not like
No, not like a point by point dissecting a.
okay, gotcha.
Okay, everyone know what they're doing? Revelation 9, let's read 2 verses each. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. Secretary Marie.
And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads.
And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and they shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them.
And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions.
Okay.
And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months.
And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter.
And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates.
And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them.
And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these 3 was the 3rd part of men killed, by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths.
For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and wood, and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorcerers, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts.
Okay, the pioneer understanding is that in 606, the 5th trumpet began, and the 5 months of the history of the first woe in Revelation 9 begin on July 27th, 1299. And this is the beginning of the first woe. First woe is part of the fifth trumpet. The first woe ends right where the sixth trumpet begins, on July 27, 1449. Okay, and this part here, the pioneers all acknowledged this part here, but they never acknowledged it as anything prophetic. Okay, we've recognized it's prophetic. The sixth trumpet began here, and the sixth trumpet goes all the way till October 22nd, 1844. Pioneers didn't understand that. Pioneers believed that the sixth trumpet ended on August 11th, 1840. But the Spirit of Prophecy through William Foy in 1842 identified that the sixth trumpet was still sounding in 1842. Therefore, the Spirit of Prophecy identified that the pioneers' contention that the sixth trumpet ended on August 11th, 1840 is incorrect. And I think it's very purposeful that when William Foy had that vision in 1842, that he took it upon himself to go down to a, what do they call those people where we went and got the papers signed? Got it notarized. Got his vision notarized legally, where it was legally recorded that in 1842 the angel said the sixth trumpet is still sounding. So the sixth trumpet goes all the way to October 22nd, 1844, when the seventh trumpet begins to sound. But what the pioneers were actually marking is that on August 11th, 1840, the second woe ended. Okay, this fifth trumpet and the sixth trumpet they're all periods of the trumpet, but within each of the periods they have a part that is a woe and a part that's just a trumpet. The woe part of the sixth trumpet goes from the beginning until August 11th, 1840, when Islam is restrained and the woe stops. And then you've got 4 years where the trumpet continues to sound. What we came to understand is that the sixth trumpet began on July 27, 1449. And the pioneers acknowledged this history that the last emperor of Eastern Rome, he surrenders his national sovereignty to one of the 4 great sultans in that area at that time. And this is prophetic because when you get to August 11th, 1840, at the end of this prophecy, and Jesus illustrates the end from the beginning, you have the last sultan of Islam in Turkey, the weak man of the East, surrendering his national sovereignty to the 4 European powers. So you have a history here that's typifying this history. But what they didn't understand, what they didn't see, is they would talk about the fact that after this, John Pelagios surrenders his kingdom to the 4 sultans, that in...
John who?
I thought it was Constantine, like the third.
Constantine the Last.
Oh, it's just the title, yeah.
Yeah, is the title, but you thought it was what?
No, that was what Constantine. I didn't hear John Pelago before, but that's probably his real name.
John Pelago, is that what you said?
It's something like, read Uriah Smith. This is all based on Uriah Smith. Anyway, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like Paleougous or something like that. But anyway.
And what did he do? He surrendered.
The last emperor of Eastern Rome surrenders his national sovereignty to the 4 great 4 great sultans of Islam that he's afraid of. But very rapidly, those 4 sultans, one of them becomes preeminent, and his name is Muhammad II. And Muhammad II, in 1451, he determines that it's not good enough that this emperor has bowed down to him. He wants to take Constantinople. So from 1449 to 1451, 2 years, this Islam guy, Muhammad II, decides that he wants to conquer Constantinople, the capital. And by 1453, it's done. So you have 4 years here at the beginning of this prophecy of the 6th trumpet. and you have 4 years at the end. Okay, and so the pioneers never saw this, they never acknowledged it, but we acknowledge it because we understand that Jesus illustrates the end from the beginning, and every Adventist knows about the 4 years of 1840 to 1844. Okay, there's a little bit of confusion among Adventism because some of them still want to hold to the pioneer position that the sixth trumpet ended in 1840, but there's no way that that is true. Okay, the sixth trumpet ends October 22nd, 1844. But everyone knows, Great Controversy 6:11 and other passages, that the Advent movement from 1840 to 44 was a glorious manifestation of the power of God. So what I'm saying is at the end of the sixth trumpet, this is the history of the sixth trumpet from here to here. At the end of the sixth trumpet, you have 4 years. In some ways, these are the most significant years of Bible prophecy. Okay, these years, this is when the message is empowered and the door closes. This is the whole focus of Bible prophecy. So these 4 years aren't just random 4 years. In these 4 years, you have 2 temple cleansings, the cleansing of Protestantism, the cleansing of the Millerites. These 4 years, you know, that's the effect of every vision at the end of the world, is those 4 years. But at the beginning of this prophecy, you have 4 years as well. So once you see that, then these 2 4-year periods become a subject of prophecy. Now, if you caught it yesterday, Tyler was trying to protest what I was saying about 606.
Wasn't me.
That was me.
That was Michael.
I wasn't protesting that. I wasn't sure.
Okay, and what he was saying was, and here there's according to if you get into Uriah Smith, there's a battle in 606.
Oh no, that was me.
That was you. What were you
the key.
protesting?
Not my protest, but the key. I was talking about the key.
Yeah.
He was.
I was confused about
day.
606. I thought it was 622, but I was wrong.
That to me is moot, but 606 is the one to land on.
Yep, 606 is it.
Tanya has some nice information that in 606, and the pioneers don't know this one, how Muhammad gets lifted up as the primary guy.
Actually, it's 605. It's actually the year before that. 605.
So, but that's what I'm saying. It's this history here.
Yes.
You can demonstrate. The pioneers pick 606, and Michael says 622. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in verse 2. No, in verse 1, it says there's a star that fell from heaven, and he's given a key. William Miller believed the star that fell from heaven was Muhammad. Okay? And the key that you will find in Uriah Smith's book is the long drawn-out war between Persia and Rome. And Uriah Smith goes into detail that at the beginning of that war between Rome and Persia, the Persians prevailed. They knocked down Rome so soundly that Rome was giving them, what do they call that? When a country's in submission. And
Tribute.
Tribute. Was given in tribute. He marks it in his book, Daniel and Revelation. You know, so many talents of gold, so many talents of silver, so many horses, so many, I think, virgins.
Yes.
They were really in subjection to Persia.
Yes.
But the Romans do a military maneuver where they go up into northern Europe and they come in behind the Persians and catch them by surprise. And if you go to a military academy, you know, if you're going to be an officer in the military and you're going to go to, you know, like a Colorado Springs or whatever, or West Point, they'll teach you about this battle. This is a military technique that is still taught about in the military schools of the world. And they come in behind the Persians and strike them and defeat the Persians, but in doing so and expending all the energy to come in behind them, they have no more strength to prevent the rise of Islam, and Persia's out of the situation. And in this history, the story is told about, while they're still involved with this war, Muhammad sends the leader of Persia a letter saying, submit to this new religion, and this Persian leader just, disregards it. And Muhammad saw that in the future, this war was going to defeat both these powers. Both of these powers had the ability to prevent the rise of Islam, but once the one was defeated and the other one's strength was removed, then Islam rises into history, and that the key was turned. The key is this battle. And that's what the pioneers identify the key as. Now what Tyler is saying is that this battle also marks prophetically the time of the end. And at the time of the end, there's this prophecy unsealed, and there's an increase of knowledge, and the Bible teaches that knowledge is the key. All right, so Tyler's saying at this same time period, because it's the time of the end, the increase of knowledge is the key. That's all well and good, and that's true, and it fits into this history, but the key is the battle that allows Islam to rise into history. A figure can have more than one meaning. Okay, so the reason that Tyler is saying this is this long drawn out war between Rome and Persia is typifying Daniel 11 verse 40, the battle. No. Of the king of the north and the king of the south. That came to an end
in
1989, which was
Afghanistan.
the time of the end.
Yeah.
And at the time of the end, there's prophecy unsealed, and there's an increase of knowledge. So Tyler's saying the key is the increase of knowledge, and I'm saying no. What we're looking at here is the Battle of Nineveh that's typifying the Battle of Daniel 11, verse 40. And when the Soviet Union swept away in 1989, then you should expect to see Islam come back into history. But this is also, it's a battle because this is also the Battle of Carchemish. What is the Battle of?
It's between Egypt and between Syria, and Josiah goes out to fight.
Between Egypt and what?
Babylon. No, it's Assyria.
Assyria. Okay. I don't know. It sounded like Syria to me. I was just making sure you were clear.
Yeah.
What was the battle above that one? Battle of
The king of the north and the king of the south. Daniel 11, verse 40.
So who are we identifying as the king of the north in that history before 1989?
Before 1989?
Well,
In Daniel 11, verse 40.
We know king of the north is the papacy, right? The king of the south.
Okay, in 1798, in verse 40, in 1798, the papacy receives a deadly wound. Who is the papacy?
King of the north.
It's the papacy. It's the king of the north. The reason I'm saying it's the papacy is because when it retaliates in 1989, it's still the papacy, but it's not really the papacy. Now it's the king of the north, modern Rome.
Yes.
Okay, it's changed to modern Rome. Now it's putting together the beast, the dragon, the false prophet. It's the same entity, but it's different.
Right.
The papacy of 1798 is different than modern Rome at the end of the world. The reason that you want to mark that is in the Battle of Carchemish. What happens, Brother Michael?
Josiah dies.
Yes, but what else? It's a long, drawn-out war.
Well, the king of the south warns.
Yeah, don't explain it to me. You're not following my question, so I'll explain it. It's a long, drawn-out war because if you very carefully look at the biblical record, when the king of Egypt, the king of the south, is going to attack Assyria, he gives a warning in that process to Josiah. That's a secondary story. But when the war finally ends in Jeremiah 46:1, I think it is noted, it's no longer Assyria that he's fighting with in the Battle of Carchemish. It's Babylon. Okay, so it's Assyria was ruling the world. Egypt attacks them at the Battle of Carchemish. This battle goes for such a long period of time that when Babylon finally defeats the king of the south, it's no longer the kingdom of Assyria, it's Nebuchadnezzar. So there's a period of time that the Battle of Carchemish covers, and at the beginning, the king of the south starts the fight with the king of Assyria, and at the end of the Battle of Carchemish, Babylon, the king of the north, defeats Egypt, the king of the south. That's the identical dynamics of Daniel 11, verse 40. In the beginning, the king of the south gives the papacy a deadly wound, but at the end, modern Rome comes and sweeps away the king of the south, the Soviet Union.
Is that why they put Syria and Babylon as the same?
Assyria.
Assyria is the same.
Who puts them as the same?
From the north.
I don't know.
Prophetically, they're both the king of the north.
Yeah, is that the reason why? Because it was such a long battle and
No,
time.
that's just part of the story. There's lots of places where the distinction between the king of Assyria and Babylon is made, but they're both the king of the north. You'll find that in the scattering of Leviticus 26, it's always the king of the north that brings judgment upon God's people in the scattering. And Jeremiah, I think, talks about the two lions. At first, the king of Assyria, and then the king of Babylon.
So the transition from Assyria to Babylon, was that political? Was there fighting? That?
Yeah, Babylon conquers Assyria in that time period.
So they had two wars going on, is what you're saying?
Yeah, this is just a battle. In a war, you'll have more than one battle, but what it's showing you is that in 1798, the papacy is different than the papacy in 1989. Okay, and so in the fifth trumpet, the Battle of Nineveh is the battle between Rome and Persia. It's a long, drawn-out battle that initially Persia is in the ascendancy. In Daniel 11, verse 40, the king of the south is initially in the ascendancy. Okay, so who's the king of the south here in 1798? France. Okay. And what is France?
King of South.
What is it?
An atheistic power.
It's a two-horned power.
Two-horned power.
What's Persia? So there's a lot of prophetic arguments. You kind of run into this problem here with this one because the king of the south there is just Egypt. But these three battles are the key that tells you that Islam is going to come into history after 1989 because they did so after 606.
So we're using those two battles, the bottom one of Carchemish, to recognize the transition, and we're using the top one, the Battle of Nineveh, to identify a two-horned power. That's what we're using.
Yeah, but when you get, I'm just dealing with the key, but when you get into this battle with Josiah, Josiah does not take the warning. The king of the south tells Josiah, stay out of this battle. The Lord's directing me in this battle. Stay out of it. And what does Josiah do? What does he do? He disguises himself. He goes into battle, and how's he get killed? By the archers. And where does he die at? Megiddo. So he's representing the leadership of Adventism at the end of the world that rejects the warning message of Daniel 11, verse 40, and the warning message of Islam, the archers, and ends up dying down here at Armageddon. So there's all kinds of things. All we're doing here now is looking at Revelation 9, saying that these battles are the key that brings Islam into history. And this key here, what did it do? This one of the fifth trumpet, what did it do? It began the fifth trumpet. All right, so when the key is turned, what we're saying is all the prophecies illustrate the end of the world. So the history of the fifth and sixth trumpet is repeated at the end of the world. When we first began to deal with Islam, people sometimes, some of these guys that are, anyway, some people that are in this message even will make this argument, and then you remind them how invalid the argument I'm going to tell you about is. When they're talking about 9/11 for whatever reason. Let's say if you can't show that the Twin Towers was 9/11, how can you prove the role of Islam? Okay, and what they forget or they don't acknowledge or they're not willing to understand is that everything that we were teaching about Islam, we were teaching, it's in the public record before the Lord opened up the light on that statement by Sister White when the great buildings of New York City are thrown down. That was like icing on the cake. But the first argument about Islam is that a triple application of prophecy. This is the first one that was used publicly. So if you go into Uriah Smith's book and you look at the characteristics of the first half of chapter 9, the characteristics of the fifth trumpet, the first woe, you can show that it was Islam, and they were attacking what?
Armies of Rome.
The armies of Rome. They had a leader. Who was the leader?
Abu Bakr.
Muhammad.
Oh, Muhammad. Why did I say Bakr?
Because he was the first general after Muhammad. Their mode of warfare is identified in Revelation 9 as they would strike suddenly and unexpectedly. And this is not a minor issue with them. This is the mode of an assassin. And the word assassin comes from this history, comes from hashish, because the Islamic assassins in that history would get high on hashish before they went in and did their suicide assassin's work. They've been doing the same technique from the beginning. They strike suddenly and unexpectedly, and they came from Arabia. If you haven't paid attention to it, in the first trumpet, this is Islam of Arabia, but in the second trumpet, or the second woe, first woe, second woe, it's talking about what we call Turkey. They were also going to strike suddenly and unexpectedly, but they were going to use explosives also. Their leader here was who? Ottoman. It really wasn't their leader because he's dead. When does Ottoman come into history? What does Ottoman do?
July 27th.
Unites the
He unites. This is worth knowing, but I don't know there's anything you teach in a 15-minute presentation. Islam is beginning to attack Rome here, but they're all disorganized. They're just a band, like they're kind of doing around the world today. They're kind of a, you got one group here and one group there. But what Ottoman does in his battle of, what battle is that? The battle of, battle of, and I had to put my old Bible away so I wouldn't have it noted. There's a battle that sometimes I know it, but it's in Uriah Smith's book. He unifies the Islamic troops and he unifies the government that the Islamists control with the army. It's kind of like a coming together of church state here. They get unified, and this becomes 150 years of an organized attack against Rome that ends here in 1449. But the point, what I'm getting at, is this is called the Ottoman Empire, but it's named after a guy that was, his historical fulfillment is 150 years before the Ottoman Empire begins. So he's long dead before that time, but he's the name that's associated with it. And they're also attacking the armies of Rome again, and it's Islam again. So when we were first understanding Islam, we would use this logic, a triple application of prophecy. And why can you use a triple application of prophecy? Because there's other triple applications of prophecy in the Bible. And we used to go through and show them. Okay, how many Romes are there?
3.
Okay, so you go through and you mark the characteristics of pagan Rome. What was the title of the head of pagan Rome?
Caesar.
No, it was the same as it always is.
The same as it always.
Pontiff.
Pontifex Maximus. Then you'd go into the characteristics of papal Rome and you'd say, what was the title of the head of papal Rome? Pontifex Maximus. Then you'd say pagan Rome was a persecuting power, papal Rome was a persecuting power. Does the Bible tell how long pagan Rome would rule the world supremely? How long? Pagan Rome. 360 years. Daniel 11:24 would rule the world for a time. Papal Rome would rule the world supremely for 1260 years. And because you and her have mentioned this, when did pagan Rome's time to rule the world begin? Where did it begin? At the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. And they ruled the world supremely for 360 years until Constantine divided the kingdom in the year 330 into east and west. The Battle of Actium is also a battle that is still taught in military schools. So
What
these
year was
battles
that
of prophecy are not minor battles. If time would last, and it will not, they would no doubt in 200 or 300 years still be discussing how the Soviet Union was brought down in 1989 without a shot being fired. So anyway, what I'm saying is when we started teaching Islam and prophecy, we'd use a triple application of prophecy, and like Michael said, after we showed 3 Romes, because you take the characteristics of pagan Rome, combine it with the characteristics of papal Rome, and you're defining the characteristics of modern Rome. The head of modern Rome is Pontifex Maximus. It's a persecuting power. It's going to rule the world supremely for a time, an hour. For 1 hour, the 10 kings are going to give its kingdom to the beast. So on and so forth. And Michael said, what's the other classic one?
Elijah.
3 Elijah. You have Elijah the first, John the Baptist. Take characteristics of the 2 Elijahs, combine them, and you identify the characteristics of Elijah at the end of the world. There are others. In fact, the very message that symbolizes our message, if you understand it this way, Elijah is our message, but our message, what is the message, what's a symbol of the message of the Millerites that is repeated in our message?
John the Baptist.
Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Second angel's message, midnight cry of the Millerite history, it's repeated. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. And Babylon is fallen, is telling us, if we're willing to see it, that our message is based upon a triple application of prophecy. If you're going to be the one that explains modern Rome, modern Babylon to the world, you're going to do it by showing that there are 2 Babylons that have fell that illustrate the fall of modern Babylon. Okay, you take Nimrod, Belshazzar are going to illustrate the fall of modern Babylon. Babylon is fallen, is identifying a triple application of prophecy. The very expression there is dealing with triple application of prophecy. Once you put those in place, you go through here. If this is the first woe, and this is the second woe, and this is all derived from Uriah Smith's book, which is God's helping hand, then what's the third woe going to be?
Islam.
Modern Islam. It's going to attack the armies of Rome. Who's the armies of Rome? United States. Who's going to be the man that is the symbol of the third woe? Who knows? I put Osama bin Laden. Okay, who knows? They're going to strike the armies of Rome suddenly and unexpectedly with explosives. And it's not going to be Islam of Arabia or Islam of Turkey. It's going to be worldwide Islam. The point being is where we began to teach Islam, what we were saying is, and this is the part you have to see in this little divergent from the studies, what we were teaching from the very beginning was that the characteristics of the first woe and the characteristics of the second woe established the third woe. And the first woe and the second woe are in Revelation 9. So for us to be placing Revelation 9 in the history of the third woe is consistent with what we've already been teaching for a long time. Do you follow my logic? Because it's only recently that we understood that if we take this line of the fifth and sixth trumpet, that if you look at it closely, you'll find that it is illustrating our history at one level being the history of the third woe. Can you teach all this in 15 minutes?
No.
Okay, so you're going to have to glean your own parts of this that you need to do. So, what we're saying is the key marks the time of the end, 1989. All right, so this being 1989, you're going to have a waymark here, which lines up with the beginning of the 6th trumpet. And you're going to have a waymark here, which lines up with the beginning of the 7th trumpet in our history. Follow the logic? That's not really below it, is it? I'm doing it point by point so you can perhaps follow the logic. What we're saying is, 1989 being our time of the end, that this is the key, and we should expect to see Islam come back in history, and because the key was 606, the 5th trumpet is beginning to sound here. All right? Go ahead.
Before we ever even understood this repetition of the woes, you taught that the key was there at 1989, the whole thing about the battles, part of Daniel 11, so it's just a beautiful truth that we can see, oh, actually the whole history is parallel in our history.
Yeah.
That was already
He started us down that road, but now he's finished the steps. What we read here in Revelation chapter 9, when it comes to the end of the 2nd woe, the 6th trumpet, it says in one of the verses.
I thought you said the low end donated on 40.
Yeah, it did. That's just a slip of the tongue. At the end of the 6th trumpet, it says in, where is it? Verse 18. In the 6th trumpet, it says, by these 3 was the 3rd part of men killed. So when you get to the end of the 6th trumpet here, a 3rd part of men have been killed. But we're saying in our history that this is the Sunday law. What is the 3rd part of men that is killed at the Sunday law?
United States.
The United States. Why is it a 3rd part of men?
Because it's a 3rd part of the threefold union of modern Rome.
It's the false prophet. The false prophet dies right here. We're seeing this in all the scriptures. This is where the United States ends. It's a 3rd part of the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet. So this corresponds with the 6th trumpet very nicely. So what we should expect to see is a period of time where Islam is active, but where it gets unified, and that there should be a 4-year period here and a 4-year period here. So you've went through this, Brother Michael, Brother Tyler? Mm-hmm. Okay, so explain to us this way, Mark. One of you.
July. Which one? That's at the end of 5 months.
5 months.
Right?
Is that?
No.
That's at the beginning of 5 months.
Beginning of 5 months. Sorry, yeah, that's the beginning of 5 months. So.
Okay, so do you follow that?
No, where are you?
Okay, up here at Revelation 9, you have the trumpet sounding, and then you have a prophecy of 5 months, 150 years, right? Right. It's twice repeated, 5 months. That takes you from 1299 to 1449, 5 months. This is a prophetic key for you. Okay, what is that prophetic key?
That's where she was hidden.
Who? Elizabeth. So, here now, what is this? If we're looking at the line of are we going to call it the line of Elizabeth or Zacharias or what?
Yeah. The line of Elizabeth.
Okay, if we're looking at the line of Elizabeth, when does the 5 months begin?
When Zachariah was struck down.
9/11.
When Zechariah was struck dumb, which is 9/11. So this is the 5 months of Elizabeth. This is the 5 months of the 5th trumpet. So here is the time of the end for us. Here's the time of the end for the 5th trumpet. Here's this history that leads to the 5 months. So what is the beginning point for our 5 months?
9/11.
Okay. So the 5 months here goes to this waymark in the story of Elizabeth. And what is the next waymark in the story of Elizabeth? Pardon me? 1 month more brings us to what?
Midnight cry, where Mary visits, and there's a double prophecy.
Double prophecy, 2 women are marked.
Midnight
It's
The
inception.
Spirit is poured out.
And simultaneously, it's the inception of Christ.
Incarnation of Christ.
Yeah, incarnation.
So what this we are marking in the story of Elizabeth as the midnight cry. So what would this be for our history? Midnight cry. It's pretty self-evident. So what is this telling us about our history?
You're breaking up 9/11 to midnight cry because of the
5 months. 5 months in the 5th trumpet.
Levites and
5 months of Mary.
Is that why? 'Cause you
No.
separate the Levites.
This is different. It's different. So, what is this in our history? What does this represent here? This 1 month.
The gathering of the Levites?
No, not that.
Oh, no, the priest.
The hiding.
No, the
Mary.
5
This
months.
this is the hiding.
The hiding
The hiding.
is 5 months.
Line upon line.
Are we lining up
4 years.
1451 or 1453?
Are we lining up 1451 or 1453?
1453.
Okay, 1453 is where we're marking the midnight cry.
What happened in 1453?
The walls came
The walls of Constantinople came down.
Okay.
What happened at the midnight? What happens at the midnight cry?
The wall begins to
Wall
come
of
down.
separation.
Wall
of
separation of
church and
no, it's
state.
not church and state.
Oh.
We just
Marriage.
did this yesterday.
Balaam.
Yeah,
Alright,
two
oh, the
walls.
two walls.
The second striking of Balaam because he crashed.
And crippled.
The ass crashed Balaam into the wall. This is the crippling of the United States. This wall is lining up with this wall.
Yeah.
This here is
So
Mary.
this doubling of the prophecy and the incarnation, that it's not right at the midnight cry, it's at the period of this 1 month.
What doubling?
I thought it was after.
The doubling of, we said that there was a doubling for the prophecy.
It's got to be at the end
It's
of the
at-
6th month.
It's at the midnight
It's in,
cry.
it's in the
It's
Midnight
at
Cry
the midnight
history.
cry or in the 1 month
It's in the
history.
no.
It's gotta
It's
be
in.
after.
See, I have a problem
It's right
with
here.
every
This
time.
is where the doubling begins. All right,
Okay.
and it can be marked right then and there, or it can be marked in this
In
history.
this
On the
history.
other, yeah, on
the right side of it.
The reason because it's the 6th month when she visits at the end of it, so
But we're still at the
it makes
1
6
month.
full months.
So what is this 1 month?
It's the 4 years.
It's 4 years. That 4 years. Okay, so this 1 month and this 4 years begins what?
The second wall. And the 6th
The
trumpet.
second woe and the 6th trumpet simultaneously. So if a third part of man is conquered here on October 22nd, 1844, and a third part of man is conquered here at the Sunday Law, what is this 4 years in our history? Because there would be a 4 years, right?
Yeah,
4 years.
prophetic, of course.
It
We're
wouldn't
not-
be from 9/11 to there?
No, no. This is more detailed. You're looking for the basic waymarks from 9/11, Midnight Cry, Sunday Law. You're looking for the 3 primary ones. And what the 5th trumpet does is it starts building larger pieces of truth into these histories.
7 trumpet.
This is the perfect fulfillment of the 7th trumpet here. The 7th trumpet begins the perfect fulfillment of it.
Well, it begins
Now, what is the
sounding at
7th trumpet?
9/11.
The 7th trumpet begins on October 22nd, 1844. This is the sounding of the 7th trumpet. But what happens in the sounding of the 7th trumpet? According to
Silence.
Revelation 10.
There's
The mystery of godliness is finished. Was the mystery of godliness finished on October 22nd, 1844? No. What is the mystery of godliness?
The incarnation.
Christ in you, the hope of glory. This is the church triumphant. The perfect fulfillment of the seventh trumpet is at the Sunday law. Okay, because the history of the Millerites, this was the imperfect, the typification of this history. So what we're seeing here, what is Revelation 9 about, primarily? It's about Islam. So what is this teaching us about our history?
The role of Islam.
Finer details about the activity of Islam in our history. You still have the major waymarks. You have 9/11, you have the Midnight Cry, you have the Sunday Law. But now you see that there's a 4-year period, a 1-month period in the story of Elizabeth, but a 4-year period in the history of the sixth trumpet that leads to the Midnight Cry. And you see a 4-year period in this history after the Midnight Cry. This is the Midnight Cry, 4-year period here that leads to the Sunday Law. What does 1840 to 44 typify? Manifestation of the power of God. This is where the Millerites are being lifted up. It's where they're being sealed. Do you develop the character for the seal of God at the Sunday Law or before it?
Before.
This is the final binding up of God's people as typified in this history.
Could you point it out that from 1811 to 1844 was the beginning of the effect of every vision, and from our time to the Sunday Law is the perfect fulfillment of the effect of every vision, or the finishing of the effect of every vision?
Yeah, that's his history too. Habakkuk 2 and Ezekiel 12.
Yesterday, I believe it was, you asked a question. You said, does the decree cause the strike or the strike cause the decree? And I think this understanding of the middle line there with the understanding of the role of Islam confirms the idea that the decree actually causes the strike, because the strike's in 1453 and that's parallel to the Midnight Cry, but the woe actually comes into history prior to the decree or the strike, and that's July 27, 1449, the beginning of the 1 month. So, or do you see it that way? That answers the question.
I don't see it that way.
That you're asking.
I believe the strike comes first.
I think what it seems like we often forget, and until someone can clarify this for me, shake me from this, is that in early writings, when Sister White's commenting on the angering of the nations, and I probably have it in there, but I won't go to the notes. Someone have an Ellen White CD-ROM?
Yeah.
This is put in at that time. At that time, held in check. If you put those 6 words in, at that time, held in check, you'll come up with the quote in early writings. And what I'm saying is Sister White says the nations are being made angry. This is a paraphrase in this paragraph. But at the same time, they're held in check. Okay, right. So the story of Islam, you found it?
Do you want the whole quote, the whole paragraph? Or just it's way in the middle of what you're... Start at that time?
No.
Or read the whole thing?
Read the whole thing.
Okay. This view was given in this is her explanation of her vision, right?
This is an explanation of a statement that she made in early writings where she talks about the time of trouble. And she's clarifying that the time of trouble that she spoke about in that passage was not the time of trouble when Michael stands up and human probation closes, but a time of trouble before Michael stands up, which we would call the little time of trouble, even though Ellen White never uses little time of trouble as an expression. So she's given an explanation about an earlier comment in the book Early Writings. Go ahead.
This view was given in 1847 when there were but very few of the Adventist brethren observing the Sabbath, and of these but few supposed that its observance was of sufficient importance to draw a line between the people of God and unbelievers. Now the fulfillment of that view is beginning to be seen. The commencement of that time of trouble, that's in quotes, here mentioned does not refer to the time when the plague shall begin to be poured out, but to a short period just before they're poured out.
A short period just before they're poured out. Go ahead.
while Christ is in the sanctuary, at that time,
At that time, in this period of time, just before probation closes, and
while the work of salvation is closing, trouble will be coming on the earth, and the nations will be angry.
the nations will be angry. Point being is that in Revelation 11 verse 8, which is a narrative of the third woe, one of the characteristics of the third woe is the angering of the nations. But this has been typified in Luke 21 verse 25 with the distress of nations that was brought in 1838 in the Millerite history. Islam in the Millerite history in 1838 fulfilled Luke 21:25, that the distress of nations. And this is all based upon Genesis 16:12, where Ishmael's hand will be against every man. So the characteristic of Ishmael is that he's going to cause a problem for all the nations. His hand will be against every man's hand will be against him. In 1838, the distress of nations is marked by Uriah Smith in connection with Luke 21:25. So the distress of nations is a characteristic of Islam, and in the third woe in our history, that characteristic is expressed as the angering of the nations in Revelation 11:18. And Sister White just said, at that time, in this period of time, just before probation closes, the nations will be angry. Go ahead.
The nations will be angry yet held in check, so as not to...
Read it slowly and carefully. This is the key point.
But held in check.
But held in check. The nations will be angry but held in check. Were the nations made angry at 9/11?
Yes.
But they were held in check.
Restrained by Bush.
Okay, why are they held in check?
Because
Because
it's
God
still
didn't
away.
want
God's
us to
people
go
need to seal.
Okay, further on in early writings, concerning the sealing time, what does Jesus say to those angels? So they're held how many times?
4 times.
So we're understanding they were held in 1989. Was Islam active in 1989?
Yes.
Yes, in the 10-year Afghanistan war, and it wore out the Soviet Union, so they collapsed easily. Were they held in check at 9/11?
Yes.
If they strike again at the midnight cry, which we're understanding they will do, are they held? Are they held again at the Sunday law?
Yes.
But when human probation closes, what happens?
They're released.
They're let loose. So what I'm saying is the characteristic about Islam that we don't factor in this history here is when they strike and anger the nations, they're simultaneously held in check. So I'm saying even if they strike here at the beginning of the 4 years, they're held in check. This is what happens to them all the way through.
My only point was to emphasize the strike at the midnight cry, and the reason being is because there was no strike in July 27, 1449. It was a political submission. So that was my point, that the actual strike comes in 1453. So the second woe can begin without a strike, which is new to me. I've been thinking about it differently.
Okay, now let me run something by you, and I'm out of time. Okay, but I want you to see this. We take the history of Moses and the history of Christ. This is the history of Moses, this is the history of Christ. What is this history? The beginning of ancient Israel and the end of ancient Israel. And we go to the Millerite history, and we use these two witnesses to illustrate the Millerite history, which we use to illustrate the history of the 144,000, right? So when we take these two lines, we bring them together line upon line to illustrate this line. Is that the way you're supposed to do line upon line?
Yes.
Okay. You're supposed to, if you have a beginning and an ending, you're supposed to take the beginning and the ending and combine them in order to use them here. Correct? Does everyone understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what that means is you just got things more complicated for yourself. Because in our history here, if we're going to mark these 4 years as we're marking them, what are we required to do? We're to take the characteristics of this 4 years and this 4 years and put both those characteristics into this 4 years and this 4 years. So what Michael's saying is, at the beginning of the 4 years, there was a political agreement. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And the strike comes at the midnight cry. But at the beginning of the 4 years, what was there?
There was a beginning.
Islam was restrained on August 11th, 1840.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is Islam restrained? Because they anger the nations. It's all, they're always, there's a restraint placed upon them when they anger the nations, but held in check. And then here you're going to see the walls of Constantinople come down, right where Balaam's 2 walls are, and the wall of marriage.
Yeah.
And here you had a change of dispensation, a manifestation of the wise virgins that will be manifested here. But these double 4 years from here and here will have to be illustrated here too. So what happens here?
There's a restraint.
There's another strike and held in check by Islam.
And where is that on our line? What are we labeling that line right there as?
This is our line.
No, what's that little line?
What's this
Starts
little
at
line? Okay, you may not be thinking about it, but we've already seen that. We've already seen in these other histories when we go into the story of Daniel, the story of Esther, that there are areas that are marked off within the history of 9/11 to the Midnight Cry, and within the history of the Midnight Cry to the Sunday Law. This isn't the only prophecy that's giving us sections, breaks down. For instance, right here, here's a classic example. Elizabeth gives us the 5 months and then a 1 month.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't the only place we're seeing that. So let's bring this class to a close, and you have 10 minutes to be groupies.
You said that there was a decree made in 1453. Can you go over that real quick?
I didn't mean to say there was a decree made in 1453.
You and Michael were conversing about 1453.
1453, the walls of Constantinople came
Right,
down.
but I also,
Oh,
The
sorry,
march
the
of the
decree,
midnight cry.
the decree I was saying is from another line. We're understanding
Oh.
there's a decree from 2nd
Esther.
Chronicles chapter 30 and from Esther.
Okay.
But 2nd Chronicles chapter 30 is the one that gives us the absolute confirmed point.
Yeah, and yesterday you said something about the wall of marriage, and I said that it's not too iffy. I nailed it down. Definitely, a law is a decree, and there is a law of marriage. There's a third witness to a decree here. Yeah, and it's in the wall of partition. Sister White talks about the wall of partition that the Jews erected to keep the Gentiles out of the sanctuary. That wall of partition Christ came to break down. But that wall was a law. Sister White talks about there was a wall there, and when the Gentiles came to the sanctuary, the wall said in all the languages that they knew, if you go beyond this wall, you're going to die. So it was a law. It was a wall that was a law. A wall represents a law, and a law is a decree. So you have 2 walls here of Balaam. You have the walls of Constantinople. It's there, the decrees. You have the decree of from Beersheba to Dan, which is this history. I don't know if this might be the difficult one. This is the one that you need to be praying that the lot doesn't fall upon. So let's have a prayer and then take some
Are we
time.
going to be allowed to use notes?
You can use whatever you want. But especially you get to use 15 minutes.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you that we could come here together freely and worship you. We thank you for this light that you've been showing, and we ask that you would instill it into our hearts, and you would change us and use it to change us in every fiber of our being, and we'd ask that our work would be productive today, and you would guide us in our thoughts and our actions. In Jesus' name, amen.